Dear viewers from around the world and supporters of the Israeli Young Ambassador School, we are about to begin Tekes Yom HaZikaron, the annual memorial ceremony commemorating the Israeli soldiers who lost their life defending Israel, and the Israeli civilians who were murdered in terror attacks. This year, the character of this memorial ceremony will be different, as everything these days. But despite the difficulties, we, as the entire state of Israel, are determined to commemorate the fallen soldiers, as we do on this day every year.
Yom HaZikaron is a national mourning day. Restaurants and shops are shut down. Special programs and music are playing on the radio and TV, and the entire nation is grieving. During Yom HaZikaron, a 2-minute siren is heard twice in the entire country. The first siren is heard in the evening to mark the beginning of the day, and the second is heard in the morning to mark the beginning of the Tkasim, the ceremonies in the military cemeteries. When the siren is heard, everyone and everything in Israel stops and freezes, young and old, passengers and vehicles. When the siren is heard, all the Israelis stop their daily routine and stand still and quietly giving respect and honoring the memory of the fallen soldiers who sacrificed their life protecting the country. We will sound the siren now, and you are invited to stand for 2 minutes of silence.
יזכור עם ישראל את בניו ובנותיו, אשר חירפו נפשם במאבק על המדינה בדרך, ואת חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, אשר נפלו במלחמות ישראל. יזכור ישראל ויתברך בזרעו, ויאבל על זיו העלומים, וחמדת הגבורה, וקדושת הרצון, ומסרות הנפש, אשר נספו במערכות הכבדות. יהיו גיבורי הדרור והניצחון, הנאמנים והאמיצים, חתומים בלב ישראל לדור ודור.
Isko. May God remember his sons and daughters who exposed themselves to moral danger in those days of struggle prior to the establishment of the State of Israel. May he remember the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces who fell in the wars of Israel. May the people of Israel keep them in their memory, and be blessed with their seed. Let them mourn the splendor of youth, the charm of valor, the holiness of will, and the devotion of sacrifice, which came to an end in the heavy battles. May the loyal and valiant heroes of freedom and victory be sealed forever within the hearts of Israel.
עצובה, אנגב לך את האדמות, הזמן שעוד יבוא, יקל עלייך, אל תהי אבודה, הביטי אל האבות, הכוכב שלך מביט, עכשיו אלייך, אם את עייפה, שימי את ראשך על הקר, תראי בסוף הכל יהיה רגוע, ליל חדש כבר נפל, בשמיים יש אור מוכר, אך הלב שלך רועד כמו נר ברוח, מגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, ניסינו שומר שומר ומחייך בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, חוטף עכשיו פרח בשבילך, בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, ניסינו שומר ומחייך בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, חוטף עכשיו פרח בשבילך. אם את אהובה, אם תביטי רגע אליי, תראי שהזריחה תבוא בינתיים, אל תהי עצובה, יש מלאך שמגן מעל, הוא שולח לך תקווה מהשמיים, בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, מישהו שומר ומחייך בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, כותב עכשיו פרח בשבילך, בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, מישהו שומר ומחייך בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, כותב עכשיו פרח בשבילך. אל תדאגי כל כך, אל תתעצבי כל כך, אני מבטיח לך, יהיה בסדר. אל תדאגי כל כך, אל תתעצבי כל כך, אני מבטיח לך, יהיה בסדר. בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, מישהו שומר ומחייך בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, כותב עכשיו פרח בשבילך, בגן הכוכבים שבשמיים, שהוא שומר עליי.
establishment in 1948, Israel has been forced to protect its freedom in front of those who wanted its destruction. For this sacred mission, there have always been the IDF soldiers who stood firm to keep the state of Israel safe and secure. Alongside those heroes, there were always young Jews from the Jewish communities in the diaspora who volunteered to serve in the Israeli army, side by side with their brothers. Those youngsters, despite the fact they weren't obligated to do so, and despite the fact they were not born in Israel or spoke Hebrew fluently, decided to join the IDF and serve as fighters. These young Jews from the diaspora proved themselves as brave fighters who did not show any hesitation in front of the enemy, and who, unfortunately, at times had to sacrifice their lives for the freedom of their new old homeland and the entire Jewish nation. In their actions, they have marked the sad and magnificent heroism heritage of the State of Israel. This tekes will be dedicated to those heroes.
Max Steinberg was born in 1989 to Stuart and Evie in Tarzana, California. He grew up as a proud Jewish boy, and he attended the local Jewish day school. During the time in school, Max was known as a smart and kind young boy who everyone was fond of. Everyone in the school knew that he would grow out to do something amazing with his life. Max had always dreamed to serve as a combat soldier in the Israeli army. His passion to serve in the IDF was based on his will to fulfill his personal potential, but mainly on his belief in the need to serve his country. Some of his friends from school couldn't understand how a teenager from California would want to serve the Israeli army. However, for Max, it was clear that if he is capable of doing so, he would join the mission of protecting the Jewish state. His parents gave their blessing for his decision and helped him with the paperwork to join the Israeli army. Max was drafted to the Golani Brigade, where he was mixed with Israelis coming from a wide range of backgrounds, some very different than his. Despite coming to an unknown surrounding, in his army service, Max was known as a kind and caring man who everyone had loved. On the 20th of July, Staff Sergeant Max Steinberg was riding in the armored vehicle with 6 other members of the Golani Brigade when it was attacked by Hamas explosives. Max was buried in the military section of Mount Herzl Cemetery. He left behind him his parents, 1 sister, and 1 brother.
I heard the door. The minute I heard an Israeli accent, I thought something's wrong. And he just said, there's been an accident. And I said, is he okay? What happened? Or, like, how severely is he injured? They kept kind of staring at me, just looking at me. And then I said, I think I must have said, did he die or is he dead? And then they said, yes.
Max and my sister Paige and myself, we all decided to go to Israel on our birthright trip.
Part of his trip was to go to the Mount Herzl.
When he went to the cemetery, Mount Herzl, I think that really, really impacted him.
We were told that he had made a statement out loud that I'm going to come back and I'm going to do what these guys did, to serve and to protect Israel. We didn't recognize or believe how passionate he was about this.
He absolutely would not do anything but Golani, and he wanted Golani 13. And they told him no at first, and he's like, I don't care, send me home, send me to jail. That's it.
Just looking at him makes you smile,
Yeah.
Because Max's smile was, from ear to ear.
This is where my love for Israel is. They were so appreciative of our son sacrificing his life.
30,000 people is a lot of people. It was very moving. You realize, your life has a meaning, and you have only a certain amount of time to, live it right. And that's a constant reminder from the day it happened until the rest of my life.
think that was his mission. I think it was his mission. And you know what? Mission accomplished. I heard the door. The minute I heard a Israeli accent, I thought something's wrong. And he just said, there's been an accident. And I said, is he okay? What happened? Or, like, how severely is he injured? They kept kind of staring at me, just looking at me. And then I said, I think I must have said, did he die or is he dead? And then they said, yes.
Max and my sister Paige and myself, we all decided to go to Israel on our birthright trip.
Part of his trip was to go to the Mount Herzl.
When he went to the cemetery, Mount Herzl, I think that really, really impacted him.
We were told that he had made a statement out loud that I'm going to come back and I'm going to do what these guys did, to serve and to protect Israel. We didn't recognize or believe how passionate he was about this.
He absolutely would not do anything but Golani, and he wanted Golani 13. And they told him no at first, and he's like, I don't care, send me home, send me to jail. That's it.
Just looking at him makes you smile,
Yeah.
because Max's smile was, from ear to ear.
This is where my love for Israel is. They were so appreciative of our son sacrificing his life.
30,000 people is a lot of people. It was very moving. You realize, your life has a meaning, and you have only a certain amount of time to, live it right. And that's a constant reminder from the day it happened until the rest of my life.
I think that was his mission. I think it was his mission. And you know what? Mission accomplished.
שלחי אותו, תני לו ללכת לחופשי, אף כי יודעת את שלא יחזור אלייך. שלחי אותו, תני לו ללכת למקומו, לשיבולים הכפופות ברוח. תני לו לחלוץ את נעליו, לרוץ להשתובב עם הרוח. תני לו לשרוק ולזמר, לדלג על אבני דרך. תני לו לחיות כפי שחי, אל תתעצבי עוד, כי הוא הלך כציפור דרום. שובי לי מהחול, כי את יודעת, אהובך לא יחזור אלייך. שלחי אותו, תני לו ללכת לחופשי, אף כי יודעת את שלא יחזור אלייך. שלחי אותו, תני לו ללכת למקומו, לשיבולים הכפופות ברוח. תני לו לחלוץ את נעליו, לרוץ להשתובב עם הרוח. תני לו לשרוק ולזמר, לדלג על אבני דרך. תני לו לחיות כפי שחי, אל תתעצבי עוד, כי הוא הלך כציפור דרום. שובי לי מהחול, כי את יודעת, אהובך לא יחזור אלייך.
Michael Levine. Michael Levine was born on the 17th of February 1984 to his parents Mark and Harriet. Michael was raised in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to a family with strong Jewish values. Michael grew up like most American Jewish kids. He was a sweet, funny, humble, loving human being who loved life and lived it to the fullest. Michael's maternal grandparents were survivors of the Holocaust and passed on to him a legacy of pride and strength in his Jewish heritage. As a teenager, he loved sports and was an avid fan of the Philadelphia Phillies. In February 2001, Michael went to Israel to study history of the Jewish people. While studying in Israel, he fell in love with the country. He expressed his desire to make an aliyah and serve in the IDF. His motivation of joining the army was from stories of Jewish heroes and soldiers in the army like Yoni Netanyahu. Like Yoni, Michael also saw himself as a link in the chain of Jewish history and felt an obligation to defend his people by serving in the IDF. Michael was drafted to the IDF and served in the finest combat unit, the Red Beret paratroopers. On Tuesday, August 1st, Michael's unit took part in the Second Lebanon War. His unit was the first group to move into the Lebanese town of Ait al-Shab, when suddenly an intense firefight broke out with the Hezbollah forces. Michael was severely wounded and suffered harshly during the battle. When all the efforts to save him failed, Michael was buried in the military section of Mount Herzl Military Cemetery. He left behind his parents, Mark and Harriet. Michael Levine was 22 years old when he fell fighting for the country he loved. May the memory of Michael Levine be blessed. אחי חזר מן השדה, אמיר גלבוע. אחי חזר מן השדה, בבגד אפור. ואני חששתי שמא חלומי יתבדה. והתחלתי מיד את פצעיו לספור. ואחי שותק. אחר חיטטתי בכיסא הסגין, ומצאתי אספלנית שעבש כתמה, ובגלויה שחוקה את שמה, תחת לציור של פרגים. ואחי שותק. אז התרתי את הצרור, והוצאתי חפציו, זכר אחר זכר. הידד, אחי, אחי הגיבור, הנה מצאתי אותותיך. הידד, אחי, אחי הגיבור, אשיר גאווה לשמך. ואחי שותק, ואחי שותק, ודמו מן האדמה זועק.
My brother said nothing, Amir Gilboa. My brother came home from the field, dressed in grey, and I was afraid that my dream might prove false. So at once I began to count his wounds, and my brother said nothing. Then I rummaged in the pockets of the trench coat, and found a field dressing stained and dry, and on a frail postcard her name beneath a picture of poppies, and my brother said nothing. Then I undid the pack and took out his belongings, memory by memory. Hurrah, my brother the hero. Now I found your decorations. Hurrah, my brother the hero. I shall proudly hum your name. And my brother said nothing. And my brother said nothing, and his blood was crying out from the ground.
Nissim Shawn Carmeli was born in 1989 and raised in South Padre Island, Texas. He grew up with his parents, Dalia and Alon, and his sisters, Or and Gali. According to his relatives, Shawn was a kind soul, social in his character, athletic and outgoing, but most importantly, he was loved by everyone around him. His friends used to say that Shawn was a free spirit who lived every day to its fullest. His greatest attributes were his smile and his laughter, and he always knew how to soak in all the good around him. His friends saw him as a role model and an inspiration, not only on how to act, but also on his attitude towards life. His goodness was prevalent, even when least expected. Sean was always surrounded by so much love, and he knew how to spread that love everywhere he went. Despite the fact that he grew up in America, Sean became a huge fan of the Maccabi Haifa football team. When Sean was in high school, he moved from Texas to Israel. After graduating from high school, he decided to stay in Israel and attend the army while his family moved back to the US. He joined the Golani Bridge unit in the Israel Defense Force. In July 2014, Sean and his friends found themselves fighting in the south border of Israel as part of the Operation Protective Edge. During the operation, Sean twisted his ankle, and when the doctor asked him if he wanted to rest, he declined and went back with his friends to the battlefield. On the 20th of July 2014, Sean, along with other soldiers, participated in a shootout with Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Sean was killed from the shooting along with the 12 other Israeli soldiers that day. Sean had a very small family in Israel, but thousands of Israelis that didn't know Sean decided to pay final tribute to him. This unusual funeral became a symbol of unity during the war. Sean was buried in Haifa's Neve David military cemetery. He died at the age of 21. He left behind him his parents and 2 sisters. May the memory of Nissim Sean Carmeli be blessed.
Sean is one of 3,000 lone soldiers currently serving in the IDF. About half of them served in the recent operation in Gaza. Sean's team was the first to go into Sajaiya. I remember the last thing that I told him. I said, "Sean, take care of yourself and just please don't be a hero." He was shot from behind by a terrorist under heavy fire.
Among the dead, 2 Americans with dual citizenship. They fought in the Israeli army. They are 21-year-old Nissim Sean Carmeli of South Padre Island, Texas, and 24-year-old Max Steinberg of California.
Sean was a kid. He was 21, but for me, he's a child. He grew up in a very, very, very warm home and just had a very easy and safe childhood. He grew up loving Maccabi Haifa. He was always accustomed to that team because my father, that was his childhood team. I don't understand how he could stay up all night, every single time there was a game, sleep for a couple hours, wake up at around 5, 6, and go to the army, and go back to base. And once he just told me, "Gal, live a little," and I'll never forget that phrase.
Me quiere besar, yo que la puse mal. Oh, oh, yo quiero encontrar.
He really lived, and I'm really happy that he lived, even though it was short. Sean moved to Israel 2 years prior to joining the army. Of course, he could have chosen to return to America to start at the University of Texas. That was one of his goals, but still he chose to join the IDF, which is not an obvious thing for an American, for a typical American child. I think even at the age of 20, you do need your parents there.
$20,000 איש באו לבית העלמין בחיפה, רובם לא הכיר את סמל ראשון שון קרמלי שנפל ברצועה, אבל היה חשוב להם לומר שחיילים בודדים לעולם לא יצעדו לבד.
My brother died not only for Israel, but for those innocent Palestinians that are ruled and controlled by radical Islamic hatred. And if Israel doesn't finally get the support it needs from around the world, many more will die for no reason.
Sean's favorite soccer team through Facebook posted that he was a lone soldier. 20,000 people were at the burial and 20,000 people were right outside the borders. There wasn't enough room. I know that the reason people came to the funeral was due to the fact that Sean was a lone soldier and Sean sacrificed his life for them, for the people that were here. During the Shiva, we received a lot of support. I remember packages that were sent to us. Somehow those packages, it made us feel a little bit good. The people appreciate that we also sacrificed something, I think. Sean, I feel, joined the IDF, of course, as a reason to protect the state of Israel, but also the Jewish nation across the world as well. That's obvious, that you cannot separate the two. 2 years ago, Sean wrote a status on Facebook. I started the year with donating blood at the base. I hope that everybody has a good holiday, a good year, and that you guys will know that somebody is taking care of you. Sean won't let anything happen to Israel. Don't worry. Happy New Year to all the Jewish people in the world.
אמא, אני אוהב אותך באמת, היית אמא הכי מדהימה בעולם, יותר ממה שאפשר לבקש. לא רציתי להדאיג אותך מהכניסה לעזה או משהו, בבקשה תהי חזקה בשבילי. ואם יקרה לי משהו, תחייכי בגאווה, אני אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך. אבא, היית אבא נפלא באמת, אבא, גבר גבר, למרות שרבנו בחודש האחרון, אל תייחס לזה משמעות, אני אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אוהב אותך, אהבת אמת. שחף שיר לי ולכל הקרובים והחברים, אני אוהב אתכם, אוהב אתכם, אוהב אתכם. אני אתגעגע אליכם ומקווה שלא תתגעגעו אליי, כי אני שמח שנפלה בחלקי הזכות ליפול למען המדינה שלי. אני אוהב אותה, אוהב אותה, אוהב אותה, אוהב אותה, אוהב אותה, אוהב אותה. אז אם אתם קוראים את המכתבים, כנראה שהלכתי לישון. לילה טוב, שון.
לא צמאי מלחמה, יוסף שריג. לא צמאי מלחמה, אל הקרב הלכנו. אהבנו תמיד את הבית, השמש, שדה הנפתח בנשמה. ועתה שבנו אליכם, פשוטים כתמיד ורוח אין בנו. התוכלו רעים לחזק את אמא במקומנו?
Weren't thriving for war. Yosef Sarig. We weren't thriving for war. We have always loved home, the sun, a field that is opened in the soul. And we came back to you, simple as always, with no spirit. Would you be able, friends, to strengthen Mom instead of us?
מכאן לא חשוב לאן, לא נזוז מכאן, יחד נשאר, ואולי מכאן בוקר יעלה. אני לא אתפלא שאני עוד כאן, כאן הכל התחיל, לא ייגמר לעולם. כאן שוב נשבעים, מתפללים עם כולם, לא נהיה לבד, אוספים את התקוות, לילה עוד מותר לנו לבכות. מכאן יש לי אור קטן, אם אני עוד כאן זה תמיד סימן שיבוא רק טוב. אלוקים לקח, אלוקים נתן, אור כחול לבן. כאן הכל התחיל, לא ייגמר לעולם. כאן שוב נשבעים, מתפללים עם כולם, לא נהיה לבד, אוספים את התקוות, לילה עוד מותר לנו לבכות. מכאן לא חשוב לאן, לא נזוז מכאן.
Please join us for Hatikva.